Everyone knows Zeus, the almighty thunder god who ruled from Mount Olympus, right? But here's the thing. What if Zeus wasn't at the top? What if there were beings so ancient, so powerful, that even the Olympians trembled at the mere whisper of their names? It's wild to think about, but history has a funny way of hiding what scares it the most. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what happened here. Because today you're going to uncover the 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. Let's get one thing straight. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers from forgotten scrolls, buried temples, and ruins lost in jungle vines. Have you ever wondered why some gods are everywhere, in books and movies and school lessons, while others seem to vanish into myth? That's not by accident. It's by design. And the gods we're about to meet? They weren't erased because they were weak. They were erased and because they were dangerous. Imagine a power older than the stars, a force that didn't just rule lightning but created light itself. Sounds impossible? Well, ask yourself this. Who told you Zeus was the most powerful to begin with? Was it mythology? Or was it a version of mythology that's been carefully curated over centuries? Because in the shadows of our known stories lie beings that make Zeus look like a child with a sparkler. You're not just going to hear about these gods, you're going to feel their presence. From the serpent who whispered creation into the void, to the faceless entity that might have been the first consciousness in the cosmos. These aren't just myths, they're cosmic forces, and each one has a story that bends what we think we know about divine power. Ready to question everything you've been told? The deeper you go into ancient history, the more you realize something strange. The older the deity, the quieter the record. Why is that? Could it be that humanity feared remembering them? That acknowledging their existence would mean facing truths too vast for our minds to hold? Trust me, these aren't bedtime gods. These are universe-shaping, rule-breaking, chaos-wielding titans of myth, and yet most people have never heard of them. So before we dive into the 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them, remember this. Just because something is forgotten doesn't mean it's gone. And what if, just what if, one of them never left? Power. It's a concept we've always been obsessed with. From kings and emperors to gods and cosmic beings, humanity has constantly asked, who really holds the throne? Mythology, for centuries, has tried to answer that. But let's be honest, have we truly been given the full picture? Or just the version of the story someone wanted us to believe? Because hidden beneath the golden tales of Olympus are older, darker stories. Ones that make you wonder who's really pulling the strings. Every civilization had its pantheon. The Greeks had Zeus, the Egyptians had Ra, the Norse had Odin. But why do we keep hearing the same names over and over? Ever notice that? What about the gods worshipped before them? The ones whose temples were swallowed by time, whose symbols were banned, whose names were whispered only in fear. It makes you wonder, were they erased or were they hidden? Think about it. Why would entire cultures go out of their way to bury their own gods? Isn't that strange? You don't just forget a deity that shaped your world. You don't ignore the being you once feared and praised. Unless, of course, that God held a truth too dangerous to be passed down. Something that threatened not just the kings, but the structure of belief itself. Could it be that these ancient forces challenged the very idea of divine hierarchy? And here's where it gets really interesting. Many of these gods weren't just powerful, they were primordial. Not born into power, but embodying power itself. While Zeus ruled Olympus, these beings ruled reality. They didn't just throw lightning bolts, they created time, space, chaos, and life. They were concepts before they had names. And some myths hint that they weren't just gods, but energies that still ripple through existence. Creepy, right? But here's what no one tells you. History is written by those who survive. And if one pantheon wanted to take control, what better way than to rewrite the myths, replace the old with the new, turn gods into demons, or worse, into nothing at all? How many powerful beings were erased simply because they didn't fit the narrative? And if they were so dangerous, what were they capable of? What were they hiding from us? So the next time you hear about Zeus, remember, he might have been the king of Olympus, yeah, but he wasn't the first king, nor the most powerful, and certainly not the most feared. Because what comes next? Oh, it changes everything. The countdown begins now. 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. And at number 10, we meet the god who created divinity itself, from a shell floating in the void. Taroa. Number 10 on our list is a name you've probably never heard whispered through the halls of mainstream mythology, Taroa. No lightning bolts, no golden thrones, just a shell floating in the darkness. Before there was light, before time began ticking, Taroa existed alone in a swirling void, not surrounded by stars but by nothingness. And yet, from that emptiness, he cracked open his shell and created the universe. Now tell me, what's more powerful than a god who didn't just appear in the world but made it from scratch? While Zeus ruled Olympus through brute force, Taroa operated on a different level altogether. He didn't inherit power or steal it like so many gods we know. He was power. Every mountain, every ocean, every creature, they all came from his body. His spine became the sky. His flesh became land. His tears turned into rivers. Can you imagine a being so vast, so primal, that reality itself is quite literally built from him? That's not mythology. That's creation on a cosmic scale. What's wild is that Taroa didn't just build the world. He designed other gods, crafting them with intent, assigning roles, shaping balance. So think about that. Zeus had siblings and enemies. He fought for dominance. Taroa, he had no rival, no war, just the silence of creation. That kind of solitude carries weight. It's the difference between being a ruler and being a source. Which begs the question, if all gods have origins, who created the god who created creation? And here's where it gets even deeper. In Polynesian stories, Taroa is described as timeless. He didn't just come before the world, he transcends time itself. Unlike Zeus, who had a rise, reign, and eventual decline in worship, Taroa's presence is more like a pulse beneath all things, ever present, unchanging. That's the kind of power that doesn't fade. It just waits. Have you ever felt like something ancient was watching not from the sky but from within the world? Now let me hit you with this. How many people know about this god? How many school books mention Taroa? Why do we celebrate Zeus in movies and museums while Taroa is left to whispers across coral shores? Maybe it's because a god who is the world challenges the idea of any one god ruling over it. That kind of thinking doesn't fit into neat little pantheons. It makes you ask dangerous questions about belief, about origin, about what power really is. So here's something to sit with. 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them doesn't just mean forgotten names. It means forgotten realities. And if Taroa was erased because he didn't fit the narrative, what happens when we bring him back into it? But don't get too comfortable. Because if Taroa created the gods, the next one on our list is older than the gods themselves. 9. Abzu. Now we descend into the deep, into the abyss itself. Number 9 is Abzu, the primeval sea from ancient Sumerian myth. You've probably heard of the Titans, right? Those ancient beings that even Zeus feared. But Abzu is something else entirely. He wasn't born of chaos, he was chaos. The original cosmic ocean, the father of all gods. Not a figure of flesh and lightning, but a boundless, formless force. Imagine a god so ancient, he existed before the idea of God was even a thing. The Sumerians believed Abzu was the fresh water beneath the earth, the deep wellspring of creation. He and Tiamat, the saltwater goddess, were the first. Together, they birthed the heavens, the earth, and the pantheon of Mesopotamian deities. But here's where it gets real twisted. Abzu wasn't just forgotten, he was betrayed. His own children, the gods he fathered, feared his power. So what did they do? They killed him. Yeah, the very source of their existence, wiped out. That's something Zeus could never understand. He overthrew Cronus, sure, but Abzu, he wasn't a tyrant. He was a force, uncontainable, yes, but not cruel. His only crime was existing in a form too vast, too wild for the younger gods to handle. So, they silenced him. Sound familiar? It should, because history, both divine and human, has a pattern. When something's too powerful, too untamed, it gets locked away, or destroyed, or forgotten. Now think about this. Zeus had a throne in the clouds. Abzu was the ocean beneath the earth. Not metaphorically, literally. He represented the very structure of the planet. So when we say 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them, we're not just talking about thunder versus water. We're talking about concept versus construct. Abzu didn't need temples. He was the foundation upon which they were built. And here's where your mind might bend a little. Some scholars believe Abzu's influence lingers in nearly every ancient creation myth. The deep waters, the chaos before order, the god that births gods. Sound familiar? Because it should. It's a pattern that echoes through cultures from Babylon to Genesis. Could it be that all our myths share a common ancestor? And if so, did we kill that ancestor in every story just to make room for lesser gods we could control? So ask yourself, if Zeus feared the Titans, who would he have feared in the presence of Abzu? What would he do against a being who wasn't a warrior but a primordial element of the cosmos? Maybe that's why Abzu isn't in your school books. Maybe that's why his name is barely a whisper. But we're not done yet. Because next, we slither into the coils of creation itself. And unlike Zeus, this next god doesn't shout. He whispers the language of life and death. 8. Dambala. You've heard of serpents as symbols of evil, chaos, temptation, right? But what if I told you there's a serpent that doesn't bring destruction, but balance? Meet Dambala, the 8th on our list of 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. In Haitian Vodou, he isn't just some cosmic snake, he's the serpent, the one who coils around creation, breathing life into it with every movement. While Zeus throws thunder from above, Dambala whispers from beneath, crafting harmony between life and death. Picture this, a great white serpent, endlessly slithering through the cosmos, leaving trails of stars and galaxies in his wake. No violence, no battles, just an eternal dance of birth and rebirth. Dambala isn't worshipped out of fear. He's honored with silence, peace, and purity. Followers lay down white offerings, water, and eggs, not for power, but for wisdom. Can you feel the contrast? Zeus demands thunderous allegiance. Dambala inspires reverence through calm. Now that's power on a whole different level. And here's the real kicker. Dambala isn't just a creator, he's a bridge between heaven and earth, spirit and matter, life and afterlife. In Vodou, he connects the physical world to the divine, moving silently between the realms. No flash, no thunderbolts, just this quiet, coiling presence that ties everything together. Imagine that, a god who doesn't need to rule because he is the rhythm holding reality in place. It makes you wonder, what other truths lie hidden in silence? See, while Zeus's mythology paints him as the almighty king, his power is all about control, forcing outcomes, dominating rivals. But Dambala doesn't fight, he flows. He represents the core idea that true strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, deep, unshakable. And when you start seeing life that way, less like a war to be won and more like a current to move with, you start to wonder who the real gods of this world are. Now think about this. Dambala is rarely shown in mainstream media. You don't see statues of him in museums. His name doesn't echo in history classes. Why? Could it be because his presence challenges our entire idea of power? Because he shows us that power doesn't have to be violent. It can be wise, and maybe that scares people. After all, how do you control something you can't even hear? It's strange, isn't it? The gods we celebrate are the ones who shout the loudest, fight the hardest, shine the brightest. But Dambala proves that real divinity doesn't need an audience, just intention, just presence. So while Zeus dazzles in the skies, Dambala moves through the roots of reality. And speaking of ancient gods who shaped life itself, the next one carved time, language, and humanity into the very bones of civilization. 7. Itzamna. In the jungles of ancient Mesoamerica, long before the pyramids of Egypt reached for the sky, a god walked among the Maya. His name was Itzamna, sky god, creator, and father of wisdom. You might not have heard of him, but he's number 7 in our list of 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. While Zeus ruled Olympus with thunder and fear, Itzamna shaped the world with knowledge. Not with weapons, but with words. He gave the Maya writing, calendars, and the very blueprint of time itself. Who's truly more powerful, the one who strikes or the one who writes destiny? Imagine a civilization so advanced they tracked celestial alignments down to the minute, without telescopes. That's not luck, that's legacy. And Itzamna was at the center of it all. Every glyph carved into stone, every codex inked in bark, whispers his influence. He didn't just create the Maya world, he taught them how to see it. Zeus punished curiosity. Itzamna rewarded it. Let that sink in. What kind of god do you want watching over you? One who punishes questions or one who gifts the answers? But here's the twist. For all his power, all his contributions, Itzamna vanished. Over time, he became just a symbol, an obscure figure, tucked between faded glyphs and ruins swallowed by the jungle. Why? Why would a god so central to knowledge be forgotten? Or better yet, erased? Could it be because knowledge is dangerous? Because a god who empowers minds is harder to control than one who simply commands bodies? Now here's something chilling. Some scholars believe the colonization of the Americas didn't just aim to conquer people, but to erase their gods. And what better way to destroy a god of wisdom than to burn his books? That's right. The Maya codices, hundreds, maybe thousands of them, were destroyed by European conquerors. Just a handful survive. And in those few fragments, the whisper of Itzamna, hidden, waiting, almost like he knew this would happen. So think about this. While Zeus boasts about Olympus, Itzamna built a civilization that studied the stars, understood cycles of time, and honored balance between man and nature. He didn't need thunderbolts. He wielded ideas. And ideas? They outlive empires. You ever wonder why certain gods get remembered, while others get buried beneath centuries of silence? Could it be that Itzamna left behind more than ruins? Maybe. A warning, and that's where the mystery deepens. Because some researchers believe the Maya calendar wasn't about predicting doomsday. It was about understanding divine cycles. What if Itzamna didn't just create time? What if he predicted its return? A cycle of gods, knowledge, and power rising again. And speaking of gods lost to time, what if the next one wasn't just forgotten, but replaced by a more convenient lie? 6. Rod. Long before the Slavs praised Perun with thunderous rites and battle hymns, there was Rod, the forgotten father of all. He's number 6 on our list of 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. While Zeus claimed dominion over gods and men alike, Rod didn't need a throne or a lightning bolt. He simply was the source, the breath, the spark behind creation itself. Imagine a god so foundational that even the elements bowed to him. Yet, somehow, he vanished from the myths. Why? Rod wasn't a warrior or a tyrant. He was the embodiment of unity. Sky, earth, ancestors, spirits, everything flowed from him. He represented the cosmic order, the unseen thread tying nature, destiny, and the soul together. Ever heard of the circle of life? Yeah, Rod was doing it way before Disney. While Zeus split realms into chaos and hierarchy, Rod wove them into one. No ego, no wars for power, just balance. Which makes you wonder, did people forget Rod? Or were they taught to forget? You see, when Christianity spread across Slavic lands, many ancient beliefs were rebranded, demonized, or quietly erased. Rod was too abstract, too all-encompassing. You can't build temples for a god that's everywhere, and that scared institutions. A god who doesn't need priests? That's bad for business. So Rod was replaced by figures easier to manage, localized, militarized deities like Perun. But the essence of Rod? It never left. It just went underground. Even today in Slavic folk customs, Rod's presence lingers. Traditions honoring ancestors, songs sung to nature, the quiet reverence for harmony and cycles. They're all fingerprints of a god the world forgot. And yet Zeus, with all his thunder, left no such imprint in daily life. So who's the real god of power? The one we shout about? Or the one still living silently through us? Let's flip the script. Imagine if we'd preserved Rod's teachings, a worldview where humans weren't above nature but part of it, where destiny was a river, not a chain, where your ancestors weren't just memories, but active guides. Would we treat the planet differently, each other? Maybe that's why Rod had to disappear, because his way of life threatened the systems built to control ours. And here's the paradox. Rod, the god of unity, was fractured into fragments, but his legacy whispers in places most never think to. Look, old lullabies, seasonal festivals, even the instinct to feel connected to something larger than ourselves. You feel it too, don't you? That sense there's more beyond what we see. And if Rod could fade into obscurity, what about the next god? One that doesn't just govern death but walks through it like a doorway. 5 on Baron Samedi. They say death is the end. But what if it's just the beginning? Enter Baron Samedi, the Vodou Loa of the dead, and number 5 on our list of 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. While Zeus ruled the skies with arrogance, Baron Samedi danced on the edge of life and death with swagger, charm, and an eerie grin. This isn't your typical underworld god cloaked in shadows. No, Baron Samedi wears a top hat, dark glasses, and laughs in the face of fear. Because when you control the dead, you never really die. Here's the thing. Baron Samedi doesn't just oversee death. He decides who stays dead. He can cure the incurable, breathe life into those fated to die. Even the other Loa respect him, or fear him. And unlike Zeus, who demands worship and offerings, Baron Samedi doesn't need your praise. He's unpredictable, irreverent, and impossible to control. But why would a being with that much power be dismissed as folklore? Or worse, misunderstood as demonic? Well, colonizers feared what they couldn't control. And Vodou, with its deep African roots and divine forces like Baron Samedi, was painted as evil. A clever trick, right? Turn the protector of the dead into a monster in Hollywood films. But the real Baron? He's not here to harm. He's here to remind us death isn't something to fear. It's part of the rhythm of life. And rhythm is power. Baron Samedi represents freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from rules, even freedom from death itself. Unlike Zeus, who thrived on control, Samedi laughs at chains. He speaks truth, raw, unfiltered, and sometimes uncomfortable. You ever meet someone who sees through all your lies and smiles anyway? That's him. The god who drinks, smokes, dances, and still holds the fate of your soul in his gloved hand. But here's the twist. Some believe Baron Samedi never really left. That he walks among us, hidden in plain sight. A strange man at the crossroads. A mysterious healer in a quiet village. A voice in a dream, whispering you back to life. And if that's true, what else have we overlooked? What if the gatekeeper of the afterlife has been guiding the living all along? So now ask yourself, if Zeus hurls thunder from above and Baron Samedi decides who returns from below, who's really in charge? Because the next god on our path isn't just hidden, he was buried, literally. And his worship didn't vanish, it went underground, growing stronger in secret. waiting for the right moment to rise again. 4. Amun. At the height of ancient Egypt's glory, one name echoed in temples and tombs alike. Not Ra, not Osiris, but Amun. Number 4 on our list of 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus. But you've never heard of them. Amun wasn't just a deity. He was the hidden force behind existence itself. While Zeus roared from mountaintops, Amun whispered from the void. He was called the Invisible One, the god whose power was so vast, so mysterious, that even the gods bowed in silence. But why would Egypt, a civilization obsessed with legacy, try to erase him? Let's rewind. Amun started as a local wind deity in Thebes, humble, quiet, almost forgotten. But then something happened. As Egypt expanded, so did Amun's influence. He fused with Ra, becoming Amun-Ra, the king of gods, the unseen sun behind all life. And that terrified pharaohs. Because Amun didn't just bless kings, he chose them. Imagine a god who could legitimize or strip away your divine right to rule. Suddenly, Zeus seems like a petulant prince compared to the architect of empires. But here's where it gets strange. When the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten came to power, he tried to erase Amun completely. He closed temples, banned his worship, and replaced him with a single solar god, Aten. A political move? Definitely. But spiritual too. Akhenaten knew something. Amun's power couldn't be controlled, and it didn't come from the throne. It came from the people, from within. And that's what made him dangerous. A god that lives in the hidden parts of the world and of ourselves. Even after Akhenaten's revolution crumbled, Amun didn't return with fanfare. He returned in whispers, in shadows, in sacred rites carried by priests beneath the sand. His cult didn't die. It went underground. And from there, it grew even stronger. Kind of like a secret society. Makes you wonder, what else did they hide in those sealed tombs? What knowledge was too sacred to be shared with the outside world? Modern historians still puzzle over Amun. Why did so many pharaohs claim him as their personal patron? Why did temples to Amun stretch across continents? And more importantly, why did his followers fear even speaking his true name aloud? Power that hides in silence is often the most potent of all. And while Zeus had his thunderbolts, Amun wielded something much deeper: control over the unseen forces that shape the visible world. Now think about this. If a god can be erased from memory and still shape history in secret, what does that tell you about the stories we've been told? About which gods survived and which were buried? And more importantly, who decided what should be forgotten? Because the next god wasn't just a creator. He authored the fate of the entire cosmos, through Nyame. In the heart of West Africa, long before Greek myths echoed through marble halls, the Akan people revered a god who didn't rule with thunder, but with silence. His name, Nyame. And he takes the third spot on our journey through the 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus. But you've never heard of them. While Zeus demanded obedience and flung lightning to show his might, Nyame didn't need spectacle. He simply was. The sky itself. The order of the cosmos. The calm at the center of chaos. Nyame wasn't just a sky god. He was the supreme creator, the keeper of destiny, the architect of all natural law. Imagine a being so vast, so absolute, that everything moves according to his silent design. That's the kind of power we're talking about. And yet, unlike the wrathful Zeus, Nyame didn't punish mortals to prove a point. He gave them choice, and the responsibility that came with it. Which begs the question, what's more powerful, fear or trust? It's no coincidence that Nyame's name literally means he who knows and sees everything. And here's where things get even deeper. Unlike Zeus, whose myth is filled with betrayal, vanity, and ego, Nyame remained above it all. He wasn't swayed by emotions or corrupted by worship. He didn't interfere unless absolutely necessary. In a way, Nyame was like the ultimate cosmic parent, always watching, rarely stepping in, but when he did, reality shifted. In some Akan stories, Nyame granted mortals divine gifts, like Anance, the spider trickster, who was allowed to carry stories to the people. That's right. Nyame gave humans access to divine wisdom. Now tell me, does that sound like the kind of god who craves attention, or the kind of god who empowers others? No offense to Zeus, but when was the last time he shared anything without a tantrum? Let's connect the dots. If Zeus is the god of storms, Nyame is the sky itself. If Zeus is a king on a throne, Nyame is the fabric of existence. And yet, how many outside Africa have even heard his name? Could it be that the most powerful gods are often the quietest? That silence holds truths louder than thunder? Maybe it's not a coincidence that his legacy survived through oral tradition, passed from elder to child, not written in stone, but in memory. And this is where things take a twist. Some modern scholars suggest Nyame's influence stretches beyond the Akan people, that his archetype echoes in other cultures hidden beneath new names and rewritten myths. But what if it's more than archetypes? What if Nyame was the blueprint for divine order? And if that's true, what other gods were modeled after him? Because the next deity didn't just represent destruction, he embraced it. He danced through the fire of creation and annihilation, and with every step reality trembled. 2. Shiva. In the vast tapestry of Hindu mythology, one god stands not just at the edge of existence, but beyond it. Shiva, the cosmic dancer, the destroyer of illusions, and number 2 on our list of 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. Now let's be honest, Zeus may have ruled Olympus, but Shiva reshapes the universe with every step of his dance. We're not talking about control over storms or skies, we're talking about dominion over reality itself. Picture this: a god who doesn't just end worlds, but who dances their rebirth. The Tandava, Shiva's divine dance, represents the rhythm of creation and destruction. One moment, galaxies spiral into existence. The next, oblivion. This isn't chaos, it's precision. It's the universal cycle of death and renewal, something even science acknowledges through entropy and expansion. Can you imagine Zeus handling that level of balance without throwing a thunderbolt tantrum? Shiva's power isn't just physical, it's spiritual, psychological, even metaphysical. He is the master of meditation, the embodiment of stillness in the storm. While Zeus often acted from impulse and pride, Shiva acts from deep awareness. There's a reason yogis, sages, and mystics still call upon his name to this day, not to ask for favors, but to seek awakening. That's a whole different league of divinity, not just a ruler, but a revealer. But here's the kicker: Shiva isn't worshipped in the traditional sense. He's experienced. Devotees don't just bow to him, they strive to become like him, fearless, detached, present. He represents both the wild and the wise, the fire and the void. There's no duality in him. He is paradox incarnate. Think about it. How can someone like Zeus, who constantly wrestles with his ego, even compare to a god who's transcended ego entirely? And yet, Shiva is rarely mentioned in discussions about the most powerful gods. Why is that? Could it be because his power is too abstract, too vast, too uncomfortable for the Western mind to grasp? Maybe power isn't always about domination. Maybe it's about transformation. Maybe it's not what you control, but what you're willing to let go of. Ever thought about how much courage it takes to destroy, so something better can rise? Now hold on to that thought. Because according to ancient texts, the moment Shiva dances again, the final Tandava, the entire universe will collapse and restart. Not metaphorically, literally. Stars will die, time will reset, and a new cosmic cycle will begin. If that's not power beyond Zeus, I don't know what is. But what if there's something or someone even beyond Shiva? Because the final god on our list might not be a being at all, but the original pulse of the universe itself. 1. Hunab Ku. Before the gods had names, before time had meaning, there was Hunab Ku, the One, the Absolute. the invisible force worshipped by the ancient Maya, long before their temples were built, before even the pantheon we think we know existed. And yet he remains the least known among the 10 ancient gods more powerful than Zeus, but you've never heard of them. Not because he was weak, but because he may have been too vast for the human mind to comprehend. Hunab Ku wasn't depicted with thunderbolts or animal heads. There are no grand statues of him, no heroic tales of war or seduction. Instead, he was described as the invisible energy behind everything. He didn't rule the gods, he created them. Imagine that. While Zeus was bickering with Hera or smiting mortals for petty offenses, Hunab Ku was silently spinning the wheel of existence itself. That's not power you can see, that's power you feel. The Maya believed Hunab Ku was the heart of the universe, the source of all movement, all measure, all meaning. He wasn't worshipped in the way other gods were. He was contemplated, meditated upon, a bridge between science, spirituality, and pure consciousness. Some scholars today even link him to quantum theories and unified fields. It sounds wild, right? But what if the ancients were tapping into something modern physics is only now beginning to understand? Now here's where it gets even weirder. Certain pre-classic Maya texts suggest Hunab Ku didn't just create the gods, he implanted them across cultures. Let that sink in. What if Ra, Odin, and even Zeus were just fragments of this original divine source, filtered through culture, language, and perception? That would mean Hunab Ku wasn't regional, he was universal, the true god behind all myths. And if that's the case, why was he erased? Some believe the Spanish conquerors suppressed the concept of Hunab Ku because it resembled the idea of a supreme, unknowable god, too similar to monotheism but far more flexible. Others think the knowledge was hidden intentionally to protect its purity. Either way, his name faded from mainstream history, but not from the soul of those who seek, not from the curious ones who feel there's more out there than what we've been told. And here's something even more chilling. Some esoteric circles believe Hunab Ku is not just ancient but alive, not in a physical form but as a pulsating conscious intelligence that still guides the evolution of reality. A force watching quietly, waiting for humanity to be ready. Ready for what, though? A revelation? A return? Maybe that's why he was hidden, not to be forgotten but to be rediscovered. Because while Zeus reigns in stories carved into stone, Hunab Ku lives in the silence between stars. And if we dare to look beyond mythology, we might just find the origin of all gods, all thought, and maybe, just maybe, all of us. So now you know. Zeus may sit on a throne of lightning, but in the shadows of forgotten temples and ancient texts, far greater powers have always existed. What does that say about the stories we've accepted? What else has been erased from history? On purpose? Do you ever wonder why certain gods were glorified while others were buried? Could it be that the truth was simply too powerful for us to handle? Or are we just now beginning to wake up to a forgotten reality? Think about it. What if the myths weren't just myths? What if they were warnings or blueprints? And here's the real question. Which of these gods is still influencing our world today? Are they truly gone, or just waiting for the right moment to return? If that kind of knowledge excites you, if you're ready to dive deeper into the hidden truths of our past, then subscribe to Ancient Chronicles and turn on notifications. Because the more we uncover, the more we realize the story of humanity is far stranger and more powerful than we ever imagined.